Welcome to Module 1. I'm Revit-Bowker. Let's get started. Welcome to our Revit Planning Essentials course, one of 3 courses in our Digital Design Essentials series. I am super happy to have you in this course with me. My name is Revit-Bowker, and I will be walking you through the basics of Revit. To start, we will be looking at the basics of BIM Workspace today. So understanding our workspace, being able to start a new drawing and look at project templates, our grid, setting up our drawing, and then starting to add some basic elements like walls, windows, doors, and a few things from our library. First of all, though, it's important to note what BIM means. It stands for Building Information Modeling. It's used by engineers, architects, designers, and a variety of industries, and it essentially means that it's smart building. So immediately as we place a wall or a door or a system in our drawing, it's building that element in 2 dimensions and 3 dimensions with data that's attached. I can set my wall thickness. I can set whether it is a structural wall. I can calculate stairs, and so it does become smart drafting software. I'm excited to get started. Now, the first thing that you're going to need to do for this course is to download Revit from the link attached in Canvas. At that point, that should take approximately 30 minutes to 1 hour. You will have a trial version and eventually, if you like, an educational version of Revit on your computer system. Revit is compatible with PC and doesn't work with a Mac computer. We will not be using Mac for this course. Now, as soon as you double click on the Revit icon to begin to open up Revit, you will be faced with the screen that I have in front of me. We are able to open a file that we've already created or to start from scratch and create a new file. Notice I'm creating a new model file for this course. We will not be getting into how to create families in this Revit class, as that would be a much more advanced level. That would be able to come later in your career. So let's go ahead and click on the New tab. We are faced now with a variety of templates that we can choose from to start our drawing, and each one of those templates consists of a different sort of number of levels and a different sort of workspace for each. And so in different industries, they tend to choose certain templates that work within their industry. You'll see a few that we have here. Now, assuming that Revit installed correctly, we can also choose the Browse button, which will help us to see all of the templates that are available to us. Let's go ahead and do that now. Now, be very aware of the pathway from which you get your template. Right now, the default folder is called the Canadian or Canada folder. And as we are in Canada, everything in this folder is typically metric. And we're going to be using Imperial for the rest of this course. So let's go up a level and double click or click on Templates. And then move over to the folder called Generic, double click. And in our generic folder, we will have a default template that is very useful, not terribly complicated, that has an _I and then EN for English. And so we're going to use this Imperial, the I stands for Imperial, folder as a template for our drawing from here on forward. Let's now take a look at our workspace in front of us. It looks pretty complicated to start, but it's not too difficult as we get moving. We will start with how to zoom within the software. So if you scroll your wheel on your mouse in and out, you'll be able to zoom in and out of your file or your drawing area. If you hold down the wheel and drag left or right, that will enable you to pan. And finally, and later on in the course, we'll be looking at how to view our drawing in 3 dimensions, and we will do that later on within this course. You will see a variety of menus on the top of your screen, many of which we will touch on. The main one that will be in for the next 3 modules will be the Architecture tab. This is where we draw everything we need to draw, including setting our grids, setting our elevation levels, and adding in our walls and text and so forth. On the left-hand side, you will see a Properties window. As we draw things, this Properties window will tell us all of the details of the object. What kind of wall is it? What size of door is it? What are the materials of that object? Very, very useful. Down on the bottom left-hand side of your screen, you will see our Project Browser window. This is where we get to choose which level or which view we will be drawing in. The default template has 2 levels of floor plans and a site plan, as well as 2 levels of ceiling plan that you can draw in for this file. You should be clicked on the level 1 floor or level, and so we can go ahead and double click the words level 1 to ensure that we're in level 1 as we begin to draw together. We're going to be starting under the Architecture tab and learning how to add a grid to our workspace or our drawing. And you will notice that if you move all the way to the right-hand side, you should see a button that says Grid. Now, the benefit of adding a grid to your drawing is it allows you to create snap points, places that you can snap to basically on your plan so that you don't have to calculate every distance. And so we simply add these and offset them. This becomes very, very useful in commercial drawings like corporate offices where we have to place columns at a certain distance apart. So we do want to learn how to do this. So go ahead and click on the word grid. We're going to click somewhere on our left-hand side and hover over to the right and place our first grid. And there it is. Now you'll notice that it has a number 1 in it, and it does sit outside of these little elevation markers, which we will talk about later in the course. Don't worry too much about that. Those can be moved or modified later. Now for our second grid marker, we're going to start to grab the tail, or at least hover over the tail and hover down. Notice that we are not clicking, but we're hovering over the tail and hovering down. And what happens is it will tell us how far we are hovering, and so we can choose a specific distance for our next grid marker. Let's go ahead and wait till it says 20 feet. We can zoom in and pan so that we can see our work, and when it says 20 feet, let's click and place our second grid. It will automatically attempt to align with your first grid, which is wonderful. Great. Now for the third grid marker, a quick little shortcut would be to type the distance rather than to carefully hover. So notice how I'm hovering my mouse right now, but if I just want to save a little bit of time, I'm going to go ahead and type 20, enter. And you'll notice that Revit defaults to feet rather than inches. And click. Let's try that one more time. Hover, type 20, enter, and click. Now for the grid markers going in the vertical direction, we can start at the top, place one anywhere we desire, and we will drag down and click. And again, this can be moved. You'll notice how the numbers continue to increase. But what if I was needing a grid that had columns or structure, and I wanted to understand, you know, this would be a corner of, it'd be the corner right now of 1 and 5, but it might make more sense for this to have the letter A in it. So if we want to change the number that's already in there, we simply need to double click, type the letter A, and click outside of the grid marker. Let's add a few more. Architecture, grid, hover, type 20, and down we go. Now, isn't it amazing that it knew that we had typed A in the first grid marker, and it automatically began to organize the grid so that the next letter became B? I love that about Revit. Hover over the tail, 20, enter, and so forth. And let's keep doing this till we have a few. Why don't we take it all the way to H? Perfect. Okay. Now, if at any point later on I realize that I need a distance to change or something has to move, I can simply click on a grid marker and physically drag it to the distance I would like. That's perfectly fine. And if I don't like what I just did, I can go Control Z, of course, to undo. The other thing I can do is you'll notice that there's a temporary dimension marker there for us. So at any point when we see that appear, I can click on that and change that number, and that will move our grid. That is one of the best features in Revit, are those temporary dimensions. And so now you have a grid. Good for you. Next, we're going to take a look at our elevation areas in our drawing. And so take a look at the bottom left-hand side of your screen where it says Project Browser Project 1. And we're going to save this file pretty shortly, so stay tuned for that. But under the area that says Elevations, we can click on any of these elevations to get an idea of the levels of our plan or our drawing, or our building really. Let's start by double-clicking on the word East. Notice how that changes your view immediately. And because we're building in a three-dimensional environment, or building information modeling essentially, this knows everything about this building in a sense. So here we go. What we'll notice is that we have a level 1. It is located at 0 feet, 0 inches. That could change. What if level 1 was below grade? Then we could change that. We also have a level 2, and right now it's located at 10 feet above level 1. We also have some grid markers. Those are the ones that we just added in our plan. Those would otherwise not be there, and that just helps us to know where those grid markers are in elevation. Now, to add another level, let's say I actually need 3 levels in my drawing. Well, I can do that. Click on the Architecture tab. Click on the area that says Level, which is located right beside the area called Grid. So we click Level. We're going to hover up, just like we did when we did the grid, type 10 to keep it consistent, and begin to hover over until it lines up on the right-hand side for our 3rd level. Great, we've added that 3rd level. You'll notice that everything updated. At times you'll get a message saying, do you want to update all of the plans? And typically we say yes. So as soon as we added a 3rd level for our floor plan in our browser, you'll notice that it also automatically added a 3rd level for our ceiling plans as well. Okay, now a few things we can do over here. What if I don't want that to be 10 feet? I actually need it to be 8 feet. Well, of course, we can double click on the text there and type 8 for 8 feet, because we know that feet, or is the default in Revit, inches is not. And so as soon as I typed 8 for that level, you'll notice it went down a little. Let me show you that again. Double clicked here, typed 8, enter, and that level went down. And so it literally went down 2 feet, and it shows me now that that level's at 8 feet, and this level, there's a 12-foot distance that goes up to level 3 at 20 feet. Let's bring that down as well. Let's bring that to 18 feet. Okay, great. We could do this manually, or we could do it by typing. Now let's try one more thing. What if I don't want them to be called level 1, level 2? What if I want this to be called main floor? And enter. Now this is where Revit warns you and says, would you like all of your views that go with level 1 to also be called main floor? And I always say yes to this. So let's go ahead and say yes, because we don't want to become confused by our drawing. So now we have main floor, floor plan, and under ceiling plan, we have a main floor ceiling plan. Very helpful. Let's go ahead and change level 2 to say 2nd floor. Whoops, watch my spelling. Typing with one hand. 2nd floor, enter. Yes, I would. And let's call level 3 the roof. All right, now we have 3 levels, so we can add a roof. We have a roof level, a main floor, and a 2nd floor. Each floor is a little different in height, 8 feet on the first, 10 feet on the second, and we are good to go now with 3 levels, and I'm super pumped. Now it is time to draw our first wall, which it's going to get fun from here, folks. So what we're going to do to get back into the planning view out of elevation mode is to double click where it says main floor under floor plans underneath your project browser. Double click. And this, Revit will remind us, is a very, very good time to save your project. So what I'd like us to do at this point is to type a name for this project under File, Save As, Project, and let's save this somewhere that you'll remember. So we could call this Module 1 Exercise. And there we go. Save it somewhere, maybe on your desktop or in your documents. And we have the file saved. Excellent. Okay, it's time to draw some walls. We have our grid markers there. We're going to use those grid markers as guidelines for our wall construction. And so we're going to be heading to be underneath the Architecture tab. It is the first option there called Wall. So let's click on the down arrow underneath that wall icon, and you'll see that there are several types of walls. And in design and architecture, we typically use the architectural wall. So let's click Architectural Wall. Now, the minute we click that, you will notice that our property window changes. And so this gives us even more options to choose from. You'll see that it defaults to a basic wall generic 8 inches. We could draw an exterior brick and CMU on a metal stud, a foundation wall, and a variety of thicknesses that we can draw, even curtain walls for retail and commercial drawings. Let's stick with something fairly simple, and we can stick with the basic wall generic 8-inch for today's lesson. We'll start at the bottom grid marker of our drawing, and we will click in that corner. We will hover up to this grid marker, which should be at 60 feet. And let's hover all the way over to the right-hand side and click, and we're basically hovering and clicking until it's complete. Now, as soon as it ends where it started, you'll notice that it gives you a nice corner. So it doesn't have any extra lines. It just looks like double lines, which is quite lovely. And that would be how you would draw walls if you're drawing walls within the grid markers. If you didn't wish to do that, I want to try it a different way now, where we choose that basic generic wall and we just draw off to the side. So push that grid off to the left by panning over, start a wall down here at the bottom and begin to hover. This will help us to see what we're doing a little more. Now, as I hover, I can click when I'm satisfied with the distance, or again, I could type. So let's try our first wall at 30, enter. Great. And then we hover, and let's type 40, enter. And we hover, and 30, enter, and hover, back to the beginning. And when we're done, we can hit escape. And that will finish it off. And there we have it, 4 walls. Wonderful. Now, if at any time either I want to change the wall type or I want to change its distance, I absolutely can. So we're going to try that next. Click on the modify arrow, select any wall that you choose. I will choose the top one. And you'll notice that if I don't like the placement of that wall and I need it to be further, I can change this distance now. So I'm going to change it to 40. And there we go. The other thing that I could choose to do is to select a wall and go over to my properties palette on the left, and I could say, okay, I want that wall to be exterior CMU on metal stud. And it changes. How about we try this one over here? Let's change this wall to a curtain wall. Cool. Maybe down here, we'll change this wall to an interior 5.5-inch partition wall with a 1-hour fire rating. Perfect. Now, very bizarre space, of course, but this gives you just that sort of idea on how you can draw walls and connect them and then edit them later. Now that we have drawn our floor plan, I'd like for us to take a look at this in 3D. So this is where we're going to go now to the View menu, and then to the 3D view. And you'll notice that a view cube appears on the right, and our drawing is there for us as well in 3 dimensions. We can see our elevation markers, we can see both of our buildings, and we can basically see that we have different wall thicknesses all the way around for this one. Now, this view cube is quite handy. There's a few ways that you can navigate. You can click on the various corners. You can click on the elevation areas and turn that way. You can click back on the Home tab to get back into 3 dimensions, or you may hold down your Shift key and your middle wheel to orbit in real time. Let's take a look at how that works. Now, if you would like to see your drawing in a different way, in a different level of visualization, go to the bottom of your screen where these little toggle buttons exist. And there's one here that looks like an outline of a box called Visual Style. If you click on Visual Style, you will see that we can change this drawing from hidden line to shaded to consistent colors or to realistic. Let's click on Realistic. And here we can see this curtain wall is glass, and we can see a variety of the materials that have been added to our drawing. Take a look, orbit around, check everything out, and explore. Okay, it's time now to add some windows to this space. So let's go back to our main floor location on the left-hand side under Project Browser. So double click on Main Floor. Now, one thing I did want to note from earlier is all of these walls that we've added, some of the things that we didn't yet discuss were more of the properties of the wall. So I did want to point out something here. That would be the height of the wall. So let's click on the top wall on the top of this plan here. You'll notice that it says to me that the wall starts on the main floor. There's no offset. That means it doesn't hover in any way. So it starts at 0. The top constraint right now says unconnected. And the reason it says unconnected is because this wall is designed to be at 20 feet tall. Now, it doesn't have to say that. I could simply select take this wall up to 2nd floor, and then it would automatically fill in that distance that we had set in our elevation mode to have it automatically go to the 2nd floor. And that's normally what we do. Sometimes in exterior walls, we do have it be unconnected, and we make the unconnected height be the full height of the building. Other times we have it go all the way up to the roof and we make that area very, very tall. It depends how you want to design it. But one thing I do want to point out is in order to access those arrows, you just have to kind of click in the white space beside the words and you'll get those options. For today's tutorial, let's have it go up to 2nd floor. Perfect. Now, we're moving on to adding windows into our plan. So I would like to direct you back to the Architecture tab and over to the icon called Window. I'll select Window, and you'll notice that we do have some windows in our Revit model right now that we can go ahead and add. So let's add a few of these various widths. They're all fixed windows. Up to you what you add. As soon as I select a window that I would like to choose, it will give me the sill height for that window and the head height for that window. And so all I need to do at this point is to begin to hover along my wall and decide where I would like this window to be placed. And there it is. Notice how it breaks through the wall. It's actually happening in 3 dimensions as well. It has properties, size, window trim, finishes, and so forth. And there's our first window. Now, a few things to note about windows is, of course, what we already know. I can relocate that window simply by editing the temporary dimension text. So where it says 6'6", I'm going to add 8, and my window will move. If I would like that to be further, I will type 10. Excellent. I can also edit which direction the sill is located. Right now the window sill is on the interior, but if I click on these little arrows right here, it will flip it and mirror it to be faced to the other side, which is extremely handy. So let's go ahead and add a few other windows that we can find in here. And you might want to add a few. Wonderful. Okay, so let's investigate a couple of things about these windows. And please note that what I'm going to say about our window insertion will also apply to every single thing that we insert into our model. And this really relates then to our properties menu on the left-hand side of our screen. So if I click on one of the windows, I'd like you to do the same. Let's take a look at it. And I wish to make changes to the window, then I can do that even after it is inserted. That's absolutely fine. So if I want to make this be 6 feet instead, and I want to make the sill height be 2 feet, if I have the room. Actually, I don't think I have the room there because I think I'm dealing with an 8-foot ceiling. So maybe 1 foot as well. Those are some things I can change immediately on that object for sure. The other thing we note is that I can move this window by either typing in a new distance for its location from the middle of the wall, or I can physically click it and grab it and move it and just do that manually. That's perfectly fine as well. But here's a nice little feature in Revit that you need to be aware of. I can use my up arrow to slightly move the window as well. And it moves in increments that depend upon how close we are to the object. So notice when I get closer, the increments are smaller. You'll see that in your temporary dimension settings there. And as I go further back, the increments are much larger. And so you have to establish what that distance is. But the nice thing about that is sometimes I'm like just 1/4 of an inch off. And so I need to just use my arrow to actually adjust that object. Super duper cool thing. Final thing I want to say about this object or this window is I can also click on the Edit Type button here, which gives me a lot more information about that object in terms of its construction and a variety of things. For example, the width of the window is here. So if I wish to change the width of the window, I certainly can. Now I do want to caution you that these are Revit windows and they are sort of fixed sizes from Revit. So what I'm going to show you right now is how I would approach changing these types of details about a window, and we would want to do that by duplicating the component, renaming it something that we know belongs to us, and then going ahead and changing the items. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click on duplicate. This is a way to make your own things within Revit. So duplicate. And I'm going to call this, for the sake of lack of a better idea, Sherry window. And I'll say 30. Maybe I'm going to change it to be 42 inches wide. So I'll say 42. Okay. I'm going to rename that. Now that I have that renamed, it's a brand new object. And now I really can do whatever I want to it. And I'm not hurting any of the Revit sort of files within the system, any of the Revit components. And so that's wonderful. So that's great in terms of the size got changed there. Now, what about the material? You'll notice that there's an area that says materials and finishes. And for many of the objects within Revit, this is where we will change those details from within the object itself by hitting edit type like we did. The glass plane right now is a glass material, and Revit is full of other materials that we can choose. In order to access those materials, we have to click on the word or that line item so that these 3 little dots appear for us, which opens up a whole bunch of materials that exist within Revit. And these are the very simplified materials. In a more advanced Revit class, we would learn how to create your own materials, import various textures, and how to load materials from within the software down here to get into your model. So just be aware of that. But I do want you to note that this is how you would change a material of something, and we can see how that works over here. And so I could change this maybe to a plywood or whatever, metal, if I wanted to. Okay? Now the final thing I want to show you for windows is how to load windows that aren't existing immediately within your drawing. So I'm going to go back to the Architecture tab and back to the word window. And as we did previously, we noticed that a few windows appeared, but it wasn't a lot of windows. It was just some of the basics that Revit or this file had within it. Now what I'm going to encourage you to do after you click on window is to click on the words load family. Now in the folders of the download of Revit, there's a whole bunch of other libraries that we can choose from that we would insert into our drawing if we wish to use them. Okay, now we remember that generally speaking, the Canada folder is in metric. So I'm going to take us back a level to libraries and then generic. Now I don't have any, unfortunately I didn't download the generic imperial models. So my apologies. We'll go back to libraries, Canada, and we're going to look for windows. There we go. Double click on windows. And this is where you can see a variety of other window styles, skylights, and a whole bunch of things that we could insert. Why don't we find this window-awning-single RFA, which is a series of family files that we want to bring in. And let's choose that and say open. You'll notice that this will show us all of the sizes that will be available to us. And actually these are an imperial, so that's perfect. And we'll say okay. Wonderful. We now have these new components in our model, and we can see that they are sort of listed in imperial, or sorry, in metric, but they do give us an actual width in imperial as well, which for someone like me, kind of handy. So let's add a couple of those to our model. And then we can take a look at this in 3D and see what it looks like. And there you go. Okay, the final part of today's lesson is to get some doors into our space, and then we're going to basically do a little practice go at seeing how far we got. So let's go back and double click on our main floor in our floor plan area. And our goal now is to insert a few doors. And really, now that we know how to insert windows, inserting a door is pretty much exactly the same thing. And once we get a handle on how Revit kind of thinks and works, you'll find it's quite easy as we move along. So back to the architecture tab we go, and we're going to click on the word door. And we're going to take a look at the doors that are available. Pretty basic, single flush flat panel doors and so forth. So why don't we just go straight to the load family button for this. And we'll get out of the Windows folder and we will go back into the doors, into the Canada folder, and double click on doors. You'll notice there are a variety of other styles of doors and door families here. You can even go into another folder yet again, in residential for example, and take a look at a whole variety of doors here. So find one that you quite like. You might even play around with the garage door. I'm going to add this one right here, and it will be a full family. And you'll notice again that it comes in with the various sizes that we could choose from, and say okay. And now when I go back to architecture and doors, I have a new family that I can choose from, which is wonderful. So I'm going to go through these ones right here and see what I have available to me. I think we're good. And I'm going to insert a door right there. And maybe I'll throw one right over here. This is, again, not a great plan. And I think I'll load another family and see what we have for double doors. Sounds good. Let's choose that one. And I'll throw some double doors right here or here. Now again, just like the windows, if I wish to mirror the doors in any way, I can do that. So I could have the doors swing in or go the opposite way, left and right. I could have this door, have a swing that way, and swing in, and so I'm able to change all of these things. As well, I could use my right or left arrows, and for this one I could use my up and down arrows to adjust the location, or I could type in a new distance into my temporary dimension area there as well. Also, and finally, I could click edit type, duplicate the door, give it a name that I will remember, maybe with my name or something else that will help me to understand, and then I can change the actual finish of the door handle material, the finish of the door, and a variety of other sizes that you will find there as well. Super, super useful. And so adding doors is very, very easy in our model, and we can see that we have the start of a plan. Now, if I was to add to this, and I wanted to add more walls, I certainly could. I could add a wall from here, and I could add a wall from here, as well as add a few doors. See how quickly we can put a plan together. Now, the final thing I want to show you, which will really bring us into an exercise here and basically having a look at this, would be how do I hide an item if I don't wish to see it? And so sometimes what we would want to hide maybe would be the grid. We might want to have a grid on our plan, but we don't want to see it once we get going in our plan, right? So to hide something, I want you to come down to the bottom of your screen and notice there's like a pair of sunglasses or glasses there. I always call them sunglasses, but really they're just glasses. And if I click those glasses, you can see that there's a variety of things and ways you can hide things. So let's go ahead and click on one of our grid markers and then go to our glasses. And you'll notice I can either hide that element, which means I would simply hide that line, or I could hide that whole category. I'm going to choose to click on that grid marker and hide the entire category. You'll notice that all of those items go away from me so that it just kind of stays out of my drawing area right now, so that it's not too confusing. So that's very, very useful. The same thing could apply if I thought, you know what, I want to have all my doors off right now. I just want the openings there. Perhaps I would go back in, choose those glasses, and say, hide category. All the doors are gone. Perfect. And so as I'm working along, I can do this in a variety of ways to kind of work on my drawing and keep track of things and not get too confused by all the lines. And if ever I want it all to show again, this is like another way to turn layers on and off, I guess, if you will. I can click on the glasses again and say, reset, temporary, hide, isolate. And there you go. What if I wanted to just work on just this wall and I wanted to do some things to just this wall? Well, I could actually isolate the element and I would only have that area of the wall there. And again, I could reset it all. Very, very useful. So here's my goal for you. I do want you to go ahead and hide the grid element, or category, I should say. Hide that grid category. And I would like you to build out a floor plan with this first space that we drew. Make it whatever you want. Maybe it would be the floor plan for a large house. Maybe it would be something for a retail store, something that applies to your industry. And so I would like you to go ahead and add some walls, some doors, and some windows so that it looks the way that you want with the sill heights that you want. And when that's done, I would like you to show it to us in 3D and take a look at what that looks like in 3 dimensions. Okay, thanks everybody. Good luck.